member for Noosa.
Deputy Speaker, the COVID-disrupted estimates hearings 2021 highlighted again improvements within our committee processes, and I think there's some that could do in this chamber as well, from what I've just seen, that could be implemented. Previous requests have included a change to the way the questions can be asked, increased time allocation, and I know there's been a lot of toing and froing, but I'll go into that later, for opposition and crossbench members. The setting of time constraints for questions and answers, providing a segment for non-budget related questions. Research on the way that unicameral parliaments in other jurisdictions, such as New Zealand, Scotland and Canada, operate, compared with Queensland, was conducted by two of our parliamentary interns, and I seek leave to table the research and practical solutions papers. Seek leave. Thank you. Deputy Speaker, detailed research shows that what we can tweak to have a truly effective representation, processes that afford all members equal opportunity to represent their constituents and of holding the government to account on their policy and monetary decisions. This includes ensuring that committees can make amendments to legislation, access additional resourcing and layperson expertise, and be provided additional allocated chamber time. In addition, bipartisanship, which would allow non-government members to chair committees, either proportionally as New Zealand does or on rotation of chair between government and non-government members, with no casting vote. Parliament and estimates can benefit by a review of how time is allocated in this chamber. Recommendations utilised globally, including limiting ministerial statements and Dorothy Dix's, and providing extra opportunities in the first session every day for non-government members to contribute. Previous requests to the Premier and the Committee of the Legislative Assembly to review procedures have been unsuccessful. Deputy Speaker, in my statement of reservation, I have outlined further recommendations that covers issues raised over the last 3 years, which would ensure this House and the estimates process is comprehensive and fair, and I seek leave to table those recommendations. Now, to the Legal Affairs and Safety Budget 21-22. Domestic and family violence and its impact on victims and communities is a key focus, especially as Noosa is under-resourced with emergency housing for those fleeing domestic violence. With competing needs across the state, prioritising emergency and affordable housing must be dominant in efforts. We must also ensure that funding packages to refuges and organisations is increased to deliver targeted services to the children of victims. Even though how funding is spent is determined, and that was responded by the Minister, by the organisation, there has been no increase above CPI over many years to accommodate children in the provision of support services. This is concerning in efforts to break the intergenerational cycles. I welcome the Attorney-General's generous offer to work closely with me on this, to provide what is sought by these families and organisations. With a limited time allocation, there are a number of questions that could not be asked. Now, remember, while everyone's saying you've got plenty of time over there, as a member of the crossbench, in many of those sessions we had 5 minutes. Now, that's to squeeze between 3 parties and 1 independent that are so diverse. So sometimes 2 questions divvied up between 4. Not an easy feat. So these questions that I couldn't get in included housing perpetrators, where appropriate, to allow victims and their children to stay in the family home instead of the trauma of relocating to housing that does not exist in my community. As well, funding for the Electoral Commission of Queensland to ensure the privacy of voters' information and the misleading practices used by political parties to obtain voter information, and we need this addressed. Likewise, a review of electoral boundaries is long overdue and needs to be considered in next year's budget. This to ensure that there is consistency of representation and resourcing for all Queenslanders. Regarding much-needed additional police resourcing, including at our Tiwa Beach, increasing domestic violence being experienced, my community looks forward to being included in the promised extra personnel from Minister Ryan, and thank you. Bushfire resources, training for SES personnel and volunteers, and dealing with youth crime. have shown up as deficits, and current and future budgets must be adapted to provide the increases needed. And yes, we've got to make sure we've got those pilots for the lap. In conclusion, I'd like to thank our Chair, fellow members of the committee, hard-working and tireless Secretariat, to all ministers, their staff, departmental office, everyone else. Your work is very much appreciated in COVID time, and I send deep gratitude to all frontliners who are just incredible in all ways. Thank you.
Speaker.